Today, we're diving into the code that basically runs our lives, and we're asking a pretty tough question. Is that code deliberately fanning the flames of real-world conflict? Let's get right into it. You ever just scroll through your social media feed and just feel completely drained? All the arguments, the constant outrage, the division, it's exhausting. And it's a feeling a lot of us have. But what is actually going on behind the screen? So here's the main idea we're going to unpack today. That feeling, that exhaustion, it's not some random accident. It's actually a feature, not a bug, of the systems that are built from the ground up to keep our attention. In a very real way, the anger is by design. Okay, so let's start by really digging into the problem. How does the internet, which is so personalized for each of us, create an environment that feels so incredibly divisive? Well, it all kicks off with something called a filter bubble. Just think about it this way. The algorithms, they learn what you like, what you click on, and then they just keep feeding you more and more of the exact same stuff. This makes us feel comfortable, sure, but it also makes us way more resistant to different ideas and can even lead us to, demonize people who just don't see the world the same way we do.
So, if we're all kind of drifting apart in our own little bubbles, what's the spark that ignites all the conflict? Let's pull back the curtain and look at the actual mechanics that turn these bubbles into battlegrounds.
And here it is. This is probably the most crucial point. Social media platforms are businesses, and their goal is to maximize engagement, to keep you on their site. And what is more engaging than a powerful emotional reaction? As our source material points out, outrage is an incredibly effective tool for keeping our eyes glued to the screen.
And this creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop. You see some outrageous content, and it gives you this tiny hit of dopamine. That's the reward chemical in your brain. So you react, you share it, you drop a comment. The algorithm sees all that engagement and thinks, oh, this is great stuff. Let's push this out to even more people. And boom, the cycle just keeps repeating, getting louder and more intense every single time.
Of course, we can't blame it all on the algorithm. There's the human element, too. Anonymity makes people way bolder than they'd ever be face-to-face. There's often a lack of any real consequences. And online, it is just so easy to find your tribe, which can really quickly snowball into a very hostile us versus them mindset. Okay, so we've got all this anger online, but does it actually spill over into the real world? Does it really matter? Let's take a look at the data. Now, this might actually surprise you. In the US, overall violent crime has been on a pretty significant downward trend since the early 90s. That's long before social media was the force it is today. So the story isn't as simple as just more internet equals more violence. But, and this is a huge but, look at this. While traditional violent crime has been falling, a totally new kind of conflict has just exploded: cybercrime. Everything from malware to massive data hacks is a whole new dimension of aggression that just didn't exist on this scale before the internet. Conflict didn't go away, it just evolved. So the overall picture is, well, it's complicated. Globally, deaths from conflict are lower than they were in the middle of the 20th century. But we're seeing these really worrying spikes in certain regions. The internet might not be creating more conflict everywhere, but it absolutely has the power to accelerate and intensify it where tensions are already simmering.
And the cost of all this? It's just staggering. The estimated global economic impact of violence for 2024 is nearly $20 trillion. That's not just some abstract number. That's a measure of everything from direct harm to lost productivity and shattered communities. That is a massive, real-world price tag.
Okay, I know this all sounds pretty grim, but it is not a hopeless situation. So the real question is, how do we start putting out this algorithmic fire? First things first, we need to hold the platforms themselves accountable. That means we have to demand transparency in how their algorithms actually work. It could mean government regulation and regular audits to check for harmful bias. And it definitely means we have to explore new models that reward quality content, not just the stuff that makes us furious. The second piece of the puzzle is all about empowering ourselves. Media literacy is, no joke, one of the most critical skills you can have in the 21st century. We all need to get better at spotting misinformation, at really thinking about our sources, and at understanding that what we see online is being actively shaped for us by these algorithms.
And finally, we just need a big cultural shift. This means promoting empathy and being more responsible for how we act online. It means platforms need to invest in real, effective content moderation. And it means using those same incredibly powerful algorithms to highlight cooperation and understanding, not just constant conflict.
Which brings us to the last, and honestly, maybe the most important piece of this entire puzzle, your role in all of this.
The key takeaway here, the thing to really remember, is that we all have power in this ecosystem. We can be mindful of what we post and share. We can challenge toxic behavior when we see it. We can make an active effort to break out of our filter bubbles and seek out different points of view. And you know what? Sometimes the absolute best thing we can do is just log off and take a break.
Because at the end of the day, every single like, every share, every comment, it's a vote. It's a piece of data that teaches the algorithm what we want more of. So the question we're all left with is a really powerful one. What do we, collectively, want to teach it? Thanks for tuning in.